Seychelles has just gone live. So with that, when we receive the President of Palau, we can begin the meeting. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear friends and colleagues, good morning. At the outset, I would like to thank the government and people of Palau for their great hospitality and the excellent facilities that have been provided for this meeting. My name is Tishka Francis, and I'm head of the Small Island Developing States subprogram in the Office of the High Representative for Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, or UNOHRLLS. It is my great pleasure to MC this opening session of the 2022 SIDS Global Business Network Forum. We are very pleased to have such distinguished speakers to welcome you today. We will first hear from His Excellency Sarangel Whips Jr., President of Palau. He will be followed by His Excellency John F. Kerry, Special Presidential Envoy for Climate of the United States of America. And finally, Ms. Heidi Scroderis-Fox, Acting High Representative of UNOHRLLS, will bring welcoming remarks. I will now invite His Excellency Sarangel Whips Jr., President of Palau, to the podium to deliver welcoming remarks. Sir.
Ali, and Will Tutao. Good morning. And good morning especially to you, Special Envoy Kerry. Thank you for being here bright and early, I know, after the long flight last night. Director Fox, UN Special Envoy Peter Thompson, Excellencies, distinguished guests, members of the private sector, non-state actors, and everyone that is here today. We are extremely honored and excited to be hosting this event here in Palau. I know that COVID has separated us and kept us apart. But I hope that COVID is now behind us and we can come back together and meet the challenges that we have. I just want to give special thanks to the High Representative for the least developed landlocked developed countries and small island developing states for organizing this forum and allowing us all to be here in Palau today. The purpose of this forum is really to encourage private sector partnerships, to foster new blue economic opportunities, and really map out the untapped possibilities. in the areas of aquaculture, mariculture, and fisheries. Also in the areas of renewable energy and recreation and tourism. You know, COVID-19 and the climate crisis are drowning us. Not only were our economies destroyed by the impacts of COVID, we have the challenges of climate change, and this year, fortunately, we just have strong winds, but not another typhoon upon us. But you know, this is not normal for Palau. This is abnormal. As you know, we're close to the equator, so we've been used to calm seas and light winds. But that's the reality of the world that we live in. So it's important for us to get together, share the challenges, and come up with solutions. SIDS are really large ocean states, and they need strong participation so that we can build resilience, achieve economic diversification, security, and most importantly, sustainable growth. We need to be able to create jobs, be competitive in exports, be able to transfer that technology and those great and innovative ideas around the world and translate them and bring them to our small islands, and be able to foster the development of small and medium enterprises that it can improve the standard of living. You know, one of the challenges we have as a small country is that over the last 25 years, because of our special relationship with the United States, 40% of our population has moved out of Palau in search of economic opportunities. We need those opportunities at home. Otherwise, as a people, we will become extinct. Not only will our islands be extinct from climate change, but our people will become extinct. It's important that we build a blue economy that includes equity. And when we talk about equity, fit the people. The traditional users of these resources, they must be able to participate in the benefit of the ocean economies. We need to be a whole supply chain. We need to participate in benefits that ultimately come back to the people that live in the communities. The ocean is one of our most valuable resources, and investment in sustainability supports protection, production, and public services. Palau's Blue Prosperity Plan aims for 100% sustainably managed ocean. This needs to be community-led, science-based, data-driven, marine spatial planning. It needs to be right-sized, future-proof, practical, durable, and adaptive. We must balance production and protection. Really high blue economic security. And I urge our friends from the Pacific to think beyond just the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, but look at a Pacific network of marine sanctuaries that really ultimately provide for the benefit of the people that live in these islands. So thank you. We look forward to strong partnerships and coming up with new and innovative ideas that we can together battle the impacts of climate change and build a more prosperous future for our children. Thank you, and enjoy your time here in Palau, and make sure you don't just get on the plane and leave, but have an opportunity to visit our beautiful country. And we look forward to interacting over the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you, President Whips, for your welcoming remarks. I will now invite His Excellency John F. Kerry, Special Presidential Envoy for Climate of the United States of America, to deliver his welcoming remarks.
Patricia, thank you very, very much. President Phipps, I'm happy to be here, Katie, with you, and Peter, thanks for making the effort to come in with all of you. I don't think it's possible to emphasize enough how genuinely significant, even historic, it is that you all, those of you who've come from afar, have made the journey to be here. And those of you who live here or in close environment, it's equally as historic and important because the island states have never, ever had a moment where they've been able to host a global effort like this to focus not just on issues of immediate existential concern to islanders, but obviously an issue of concern to everybody on the planet. Let me begin by saying that it's hard for all of us, obviously, to not begin any conference or any gathering or any day without calling to mind the evil that is being carried out in parts of the world today, and particularly in Ukraine. I don't think any of us ever imagined. I've long been a student of World War II. I know we were in an island and a location, a part of the world where many World War II battles were fought. But what we're seeing every day in Ukraine is beyond anything that I think any of us might have imagined post-World War II we would ever have to see again. And so that should motivate us, and we obviously, all of us, need to be doing our part. The greatest single thing, however, that nations around the world can do, other than giving immediate help to refugees and immediate help to the people who are bravely, extraordinarily, courageously fighting against larger forces, the immediate thing we can do is actually move faster to transition the world off of fossil fuel, which is fueling this war. It has been weaponized. Energy has been weaponized in the context of this war. And President Putin has played that, and it had a profound effect on Germany in Europe for a number of years, and it has left us where we are today. So Europe, I think, is applying that lesson. Europe is going whole hog, doubling down on its efforts to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy. And we just had an IPCC report that came out, folks, which reemphasizes to all of us how, despite our passion, everybody here is passionate. Among the most passionate people on the world when it comes to the climate issue. But we all understand that that's not going to carry us across the finish line unless we can push governments, push businesses, push individual citizens all around the world to make the individual choices that they can and must make in order for the planet to avoid catastrophe. And I know when you say that, there are some quarters in the world where dismissive politicians have trivialized reality and reduced the truth in ways that make it hard to mobilize. And that's a tragedy in and of itself. But we human beings understand that we do have this great gift of being rational, of thinking, of being able to take in facts. It's the one thing that separates us from animals, birds, reptiles, insects, and you name what other life there is on the planet, is our capacity to do that. That's why we are the dominant force on the planet, we humans. But we humans are making bad choices right now. And we need to turn that around, and the best way to turn it around is for we humans to get together as we are here and coordinate and organize our lives around a real set of actions that can make a difference. So I thank you for being part of an historic gathering hosted by island states, by an island state and by all island states at the same time. Palau is representative of the plight of people all around the world who live in and on the ocean, whose fate is on the front line of this transformation. Larger, more developed world, allegedly civilized, has yet to step up and do what is fully necessary. So that's the climate within which we meet, our own climate, if you will. And I know that this is the first conference to ever be held in a small island state. Since the first Our Ocean Conference in 2014, we have been focused on action. And that's what we're going to be focused on for the next 3 days here. Action, not talk. We have actually, I don't know how many of you know this, this Our Ocean Conference has produced, over those years, more than 1,400 individual initiatives and individual commitments. It has summoned to the table more than $90 billion worth of effort, some in very direct funding in the billions of dollars, some in the cost of the initiatives that are being implemented. And it has protected more than 5 million square miles of ocean, area larger than the size of the United States, though we all know protection is a concept that needs to be significantly filled out by us, and I hope we will talk about that very directly here in the next 3 days. Protecting our oceans requires us to begin by acknowledging that climate and the climate crisis is as much on the table as the ocean crisis is, and the ocean crisis is as much on the table as the climate crisis, because you can't separate them. Acidification is the consequence of air quality and the particulates that fall into the ocean. Run the full circle of what is happening to us, they are linked. You have to connect the dots. So we will be talking about new ways to deal with the climate crisis. We will be dealing with the certainty of the science, dealing with the importance of adaptation and mitigation. And in that context, let us remember 20 countries, and I will repeat this to a fare thee well. You will hear me say this tomorrow and probably the next day. 20 countries equal 80% of all the world's emissions. And those 20 countries need to step up more, including mine. There is so much more to be done. 48 countries in sub-Saharan Africa are the equivalent of 0.55% of all the emissions. So the imbalance is one that people are rightfully angry about, feeling increasingly. And that is something that we need to be honest about and to address. The final thing I'll just say to everybody is, I'll go into a little more of this tomorrow, there's so many things that we can be doing, and I'm excited about them. What we started in Glasgow with the methane pledge. Methane has never been part of the conversation in these gatherings for the last 20 years. You hear a word or two here from a scientist, but now methane and the methane pledge, 112 countries, is on the table. It's the single largest, biggest gain we can get of returning reduction of emissions. In addition, China has agreed that they will sign on to a national action methane plan this year. We also started the First Mover Coalition. If shipping, I've said it before, I'll say it again, if shipping were a country, it would be the 8th largest emitter in the world, shipping. And here is a part of the world that is deeply involved with shipping. So we need people to step up. Maersk, largest container shipper in the world, has stepped up and said that it will, in the next 8 ships it builds, they're going to have to be carbon free. That begins to set a marketplace. It begins to change activity. So there's a lot we can do here, my friends. This 3 days can be an extremely valuable 3 days. And I believe that those of you who've come here to Palau for these 3 days will have the privilege of saying in the future, I was in Palau. I took part in the first ever island state meeting to deal with adaptation and deal with the reality of mitigation and deal with the division of responsibility. So I thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for being a partner in the sponsorship of this event. We're delighted to join with you. COVID has been really difficult for everybody. Still looking out at a group of people, all of whom are wisely wearing masks. And I hate to say that. I went to the Gridiron dinner the other day in Washington. I walked in with a mask on towards the end of the sort of, meet and greet, and I was stunned that so many people didn't have masks and were walking around talking to each other 1 foot apart and shaking hands. I did not shake hands. I wore my mask. Some people thought I might have been silly, but we read in the papers 2 days later that 55 people who were there, including several cabinet secretaries, members of Congress, all got COVID. So it is important for us to remain vigilant even as we are doing our work. Thank you for being here. I'll have more to say on this tomorrow, but this is the beginning, I think, of a really important and fruitful 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Kerry, for your welcoming remarks. I would now like to invite our last speaker, Ms. Haiti Skrdaris-Fox, Acting High Representative of UNOHRLS, to bring welcoming remarks.
Excellency President Whips of Republic of Palau, Bilung Gloria Sali, Excellency John Kerry, U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, President of the General Assembly, Mr. Abdullah Sahid, Peter Thompson, my colleague, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Ali, I bring you very warm welcome from the UN headquarters in New York. And I'm pleased to welcome you to this third SIDS Global Business Network Forum here in Koror today, held in the margins of the Our Ocean Conference. I would like to thank President Whips and the people of Palau for hosting us here on this stunningly beautiful island. I would like to congratulate the Republic of Palau for being the first small island developing state to host our ocean conference. The theme, I think, really speaks for our agenda today. Our ocean, our people, our prosperity. There is a saying that one drop of water helps to swell the ocean. And we are here today to help add to the swell of support for the future of our oceans, and to consider how sustainable recovery will be after COVID. Our forum is focused on ocean partnerships to enhance resilience in 3 different areas. First, tourism and COVID-19 recovery, blue economy, and ocean energy. We have sessions for each area with speakers from both public and private sectors. There will also be an interactive session to brainstorm challenges and solutions within the key themes to give all participants a chance to voice your ideas. And at the end of the day, we will open the floor for announcements of new partnerships, and I warmly welcome you to share your partnership with us, however small or big they might be. Because without new, stronger private sector partnerships, small island developing states are not going to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And if these islands don't reach these goals, there will be a heavy price to pay for millions of people and their communities. The climate crisis, COVID-19, and the crisis of debt are all combining to create a difficult present for these islands. But genuine, strong partnerships can build a better future, fuel recovery, create resilience, and re-energize local economies. And so we urgently need to an enabling environment for businesses, because we need them to act as the agents of change through their contributions to national development plans. As recognized in the Samoa pathway, we rely businesses to provide decent jobs and drive economic growth, economically empower women, produce responsibly and encourage responsible consumption, and design innovative solutions to green growth and climate action. It is these vital contributions that the private sector can make across all sections of society that requires us to do more to engage. And this is why SID's Global Business Network was first established back in 2014. It was established under the SID's partnership framework, which monitors and facilitates partnerships to promote sustainable development in the SIDs. It was established to give platform for SIDs and businesses to come together, to support the implementation of the Samoa pathway, to deliver SDGs, to deliver relationships where governments and businesses can pool their expertise and knowledge. So when we started this work some 9 years ago, we faced more than enough challenges already. And then, of course, came COVID-19. The global pandemic has set the whole world back, but the challenges have been especially acute for the SIDs, who are among the countries that were the most affected by the global lockdown. It is estimated that SIDs suffered a 70% drop to travel receipts in 2020, and that GDP will drop with 16% or more in tourism-dependent SIDs. In fisheries-dependent SIDs, it is expected GDP will drop about 4%. But there is also great potential for SIDs to recover from the pandemic and build resilience towards future shocks by reinventing and diversifying tourism economies, leveraging ocean resources sustainably, and developing domestic ocean energy markets. Urgent action is needed to recover and continue progressing towards the 2030 agenda, and right at the heart of that is building those stronger links with the private sector. Before getting things started, I wanted to say a word of thanks to the governments of Denmark, Ireland, and Australia, as well as Dr. Ashushi Shunami, President of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, who have funded our work and participation for the forum. We are grateful for your support, which has made it possible for us to gather across the sectors, to share experiences, discuss challenges, identify ways forward, and create new collaborations. There are few roles in life more fulfilling than that of a matchmaker, so thank you for bringing us all together here today. Thank you, all the speakers, to the participants for contributing to this important work. The outcomes of the forum will support the implementation of the Samoa pathway by providing valuable insight and guide our work. It will assist the preparations of the 4th International Conference for Small Island Developing States in 2024 and help guide the new framework. By participating today, you are part of defining this future. I look forward to diving deeper into these issues with you and exploring how we can strengthen ocean partnerships for SIDS. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Acting High Representative, and indeed a sincere thank you to all our distinguished opening speakers for their welcoming remarks and for setting the stage for today's event. We will now briefly suspend the meeting to allow our distinguished speakers to leave the head table and for the opening fireside chat speakers to take their seats. So just for a few moments, we'll allow our speakers to leave. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, two of our panelists yet to arrive, but I think let's get going, fill in the gaps, keep the momentum. What a fantastic start to the day to hear from President Whips. And I have to say, you know, I really admire what Palau has pulled together here, together with the U.S. State Department. Great job. And what a fantastic turnout. What a fantastic turnout we've had. You know, I have to say to you that, you know, I feel like my left brain got fried somewhere crossing the Indian Ocean, and my right brain got fried going from Bangkok up to Narita yesterday, and you arrive here with a sort of little peanut of consciousness left in your head. And, you know, spare a thought for the people that have to come from here to get up to New York and to London to all our meetings there. Now you know how they feel. Yeah, it's a long journey, but so good to be here. I really want to take my hat off to the President of the General Assembly for being here. You know, he represents the United Nations. He is the fulcrum and the leader of the United Nations, so it's fantastic that he made the effort to be here. And thanks also to UNHRLS. You know, you've got to be at the UN for about somewhere between 5 and 10 years before you can learn to actually say that. UNHRLLS. I did it. So thanks very much, Eddie, for putting all this together. But mostly I want to thank Special Envoy Kerry, because it's so easy to speak. After he's spoken, he's said everything sensible, and it sort of remains for the rest of us just to fill in the gaps that he's left us. You know, he is the father of our Ocean Conference system, which is now well down the road, as you all know, in terms of delivering real action on ocean issues. So I want to thank him for his leadership and mostly his commitment, the fact that he just never gives up on this. So join me in giving him a round of applause. You know, the other day I was approached by a journalist, not the first time he'd done it. He's an investigative journalist, writes for one of the major U.S. newspapers, and I always take his calls because I really admire his work. He's a fearless kind of journalist, sort of thing we need if we're going to ask ourselves the honest questions, which of course is what today's meeting is all about, asking ourselves the honest questions. Anyway, at the end of the interview, which I submitted in writing, he came back to me and said, "Peter, that is just so gray and so bland." He said, talking about SDG 14 targets, and he challenged me to, you know, come back with something stronger for his story. Well, I went back with something stronger, but I did say this to him. I said, if SDG 14 targets are gray and bland, we're in serious trouble. Serious trouble, because you as a senior journalist and we as representatives of the international system have failed miserably in our jobs if you think that your ears will not let my words pass because they're gray and bland because I'm talking about SDG 14. I mean, what an admission of failure for us all. You know, we have the Paris Climate Agreement, and we have the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. What else do we have to give our grandchildren security? Not decisions by the Security Council. I assure you, that is not what is going to keep our grandchildren alive on this planet. It's the integrity of delivery of the Paris Climate Agreement and the UN Sustainable Development Goals that will give them that security that we seek. So SDG 14, gray and bland, come on, the media's got to do a better job than that, and we have to do a better job if that's the way we're perceived with the SDGs. So SDG 14, you know, conserve and sustainably use the ocean's resources. It's an easy thing to say, but what were we actually getting at when we asked for that SDG 14 to be put in place? Because remember, it was us SIDS that pushed for that. It would not exist if it wasn't for the SIDS. It was basically, when you get to the heart of it, even though the words aren't mentioned in SDG 14, it was about the sustainable blue economy. was about getting the balance right between protection and production. Because as President Whip said, we have to think first about our people and how they're going to survive. And they need production for that. But we've got to get the balance right, because if you kill the golden goose, you're left with nothing. So the sustainable blue economy is at the heart of SDG 14, and it's really at the heart of our discussions today, because when you talk about the sustainable blue economy, be it in relation to renewable energy, or be it in relation to the future of our medicines, or our food security into the future, it's about partnerships, because nobody can do this alone. So that's what we're here for today, and with those words, I'm going to introduce to you our panel. And it's a very prestigious one, starting, of course, with the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, President Shahid. And also I have with me my colleague from Samoa, the permanent representative of Samoa, Ambassador Luteru, who's also the co-chair of the steering committee for SIDS partnerships. Next to him is Dr. Hide Sakaguchi, who's president of the Ocean Policy Research Institute. Hello, Hide. We've just seen each other. Good to see you. At Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Next to him, Director General of IRENA. Already mentioned Renewable Energy Director General. Director General Francesco Lacamera. And yes, Irene is here. Hello, Irene. We haven't met, but nice to see you. And Irene Oikaril is the founder and CEO of Emerald Dream Services and the Vice President of the Palau Chamber of Commerce. So with that, I am going to, I've just talked to the panelists. They'd like to use the podium for their answers to the questions, and then we'll do the so-called fireside chat. I think beachside chat will be more relevant, perhaps. The beachside chat that we'll have after they've given their responses to my questions. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the President of the General Assembly, President Shahid. He's a SIDS man, of course. He's from the Maldives. How do you see, Mr. President, how do you see the partnerships at the international level delivering meaningful results for SIDS, including in the private sector and in ocean industries? Over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, former President of General Assembly, Ambassador Thompson. Let me first of all thank the government of Palau, President Whips, and OHRLLS. I couldn't get it right. OHRLLS for inviting me to share my thoughts at this SIDS Global Business Network Forum. As you have rightly said, the President of the General Assembly has a bird's eye view of the ongoings of the international community. And as you yourself, former President Thompson, know this quite firsthand. But while I'm the President of the General Assembly, I'm also a Maldivian, an islander whose people go to wake up every day thinking what will happen to our islands, and go to sleep thinking what would happen to us. We are one of the lowest island countries in the world and one of the most vulnerable. As the foreign minister of an island country, I have lived experiences of what life is like in small island developing states, what works and what does not. I'm delighted to be here in Palau with so many of my island camaraderies, because I have seen the voice of the small islands grow from the Rio Conference in 1992 until today. We together are now powerful. Our voice is strong, and my advice and my appeal to our small island states is that let us keep it together, let us keep raising our voice strong. I've seen at national level how important genuine, durable partnerships are to deliver development goals. These partnerships include, of course, the private sector. Generating the resources, especially financial resources, for development is a challenge. This is where governments need to partner with all available avenues, including and especially the private sector. We need to maintain these relationships because, number one, the private sector continues to innovate, to invent, and invest in modern technology and methods. Learning from these methods are important as we move towards new challenges, to find new ways of addressing old challenges. And number two, we also need to ensure that methods of implementation used by the private sector are relevant, ethical, and sustainable, that they are aligned with the spirit of SDGs and the goals of national governments. In the context of recovery from COVID-19, our partnerships are more essential than ever. The private sector has a unique role to play in our recovery with the ability of generating 100 million jobs around the world by 2050 by investing in green and blue economies. This would increase global GDP by 22.4%, amounting to a cumulative gain of $98 trillion by 2050. Now, how do we make sure that these partnerships deliver results? I would like to highlight a few ideas. Number one, they need to be context specific. Partnerships need to address unique challenges that SIDS face. We, of course, see many successful private sector initiatives and innovations, but not everything might be scalable or applicable in our countries, in our context, and address specific challenges SIDS face. So it is important that private sector and SIDS governments work hand in hand to understand unique challenges and how to address them. Number two, at the international level, the General Assembly can support in understanding unique circumstances through facilitating opportunities for SIDS governments and stakeholders to share their experiences and best practices while also sharing the unique challenges. These avenues can then be used to matchmake with private sector or other partners. Number three, partnerships need to be sustainable. This means that partnerships should be aimed at achieving the sustainable development goals and address economic, social, and environmental dimensions. But it also means that partnerships must be aimed at boosting local capacities and building knowledge. This will ensure that these partnerships continue to deliver results for many, many years. And number four, it is important to have follow-up and review of these partnerships regularly, like we are doing here at the SIDS Global Business Network Forum. These forums can be used to discuss how and why partnerships work, but more importantly, why some partnerships fail, so that we can learn from those experiences and improve them. And number five, we need to do this at the international level. It is so that the international community, like the United Nations, can support in ensuring a more conducive environment for partnerships to flourish and prosper. The United Nations can help support, for example, capacity building, technology transfer, or other policy directives that support meaningful partnerships. And one last thing I wish to say is that the General Assembly can be an important avenue to showcase partnerships at the national, regional, and international level. The General Assembly provides that space to share best practices and to discuss and understand challenges. This has been a focus of every high-level thematic debate I have held and will hold during my presidency. At the high-level thematic debate on climate change that I had convened in the General Assembly in October last year, I showcased several partnerships that are already in place to deliver on climate action. And on 19th of July, I intend to hold a high-level thematic debate entitled Moment for Nature, where we look at the important environment-related conferences that have taken place during the course of the 76th session and understand the synergies and common gaps across all of them. I intend to use this opportunity to highlight partnerships that can address these gaps. I hope we can showcase several partnerships for SIDS at this opportunity, and I thank you.
was the date again, Mr. President? For 19 July. That's going to be a very important day in the UN calendar. We'll hear some home truths on that day, I'm sure. Thank you, Mr. President, for your remarks. And I'm now going to call on the permanent representative Samoa at the UN, and he's co-chair of the steering committee, as I said, for SIDS partnerships at the United Nations. Ambassador Lutero, Palau, please, can you answer the question for us all? How do you see, what's your vision for the role of the Samoa pathway, SIDS partnerships framework, and SDG 17, which of course is the partnerships SDG. Over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Thompson, distinguished participants. We are here to examine how we can leverage partnership of the business community for the achievement of SDG 14. So the identification of specific needs and potential areas for partnership is essential. Targeting, innovation, capacity building, technology transfer, and best practices. With 8 years before 2030 and 2 years before the end of the Samoa pathway, we need to ask, what are the most urgent and pressing ocean priorities for SIDS, and how to achieve them? The key to success will be in how we can effectively foster collective common actions. The ocean challenge is multidimensional and interconnected in nature, requiring a multi-stakeholders response. Governments, private sector academia, financial institutions and multilateral development banks, and civil society. That is the vision, to scale up ocean partnership. Making the vision work will require systematic and evidence-based processes that create shared and common action of a positive nature, align existing effort, and identify and fill gaps. The Samoa pathway foreshadowed the creation of the SIDS framework and steering committee on partnership for SIDS. Global Action Network could be one path to travel. If one is to identify a common threat responsible for the health of the ocean, the impacts of climate change is at the very core of this threat, man being the main culprit. But our response must be integrated and multidimensional in nature. Working in silos is not the answer. As a dynamic, interconnected global ecosystem, the governance of ocean has largely developed and evolved on a sectorial basis. This is not conducive for genuine partnership and global cooperation. SDG 17 speaks to the revitalizing global partnership and cooperation, focusing on finance, capacity building, technology, science, and data. The active participation of the private sector in these areas is therefore necessary. For ocean industries, a stable, predictable governance framework is essential to ensure the responsible use of ocean space and resources, to be aware of the major international ocean policies and governance process that will affect their business operations, so they could engage constructively in the process and guide companies to action-oriented platforms and tools supporting the SDG 17. The private sector involvement is indispensable to the health and sustainable development of the ocean. You are the engine of creative solutions and innovation. However, the diversity, complexity, and fragmented nature of ocean business community create substantial challenges for the effective management of the private sector at the scope and scale needed. There is a need for improved interaction, understanding, collaboration, and trust between the ocean business community, governments, and others to ensure a sustainable ocean economy. We need to accelerate transition to renewable energy. The possibility of ocean energy, offshore, wind, can provide the opportunity for the development of a comprehensive, sustainable energy sector in Pacific SIDS. The lack of investment in ocean is self-evident and a concern. We need to attract and retain sustainable and responsible public and private investment, including foreign direct investment through blending, guarantees, and other innovative financial instruments, paying particular attention to our women and youth. Of all SDGs, SDG 14 is by far the least funded, representing only 0.01% of all SDG funding, less than 2% from the Green Climate Fund, and 0.7% of global environmental facility funding. Clearly, colleagues, there is a mismatch. We therefore need to seriously address the ocean funding crisis. We need action at all levels and across all sectors. Development partners need to make their ODA rules and regulations simpler for fund disbursement. The private sector to work with academia to share ocean data and collaborate with government to fund green infrastructure. Available financial tools, including the blue bonds, debt conversion, blended finance, and incentivize public-private partnerships are options. We must prevent and reduce marine pollution, microplastic, oil spills, discharge of waste, and nuclear contaminants. Overfishing, illegal and unregulated fishing remain a huge concern for Pacific SIDS economies, as is harmful fisheries. Can the private sector assist with this challenge? Recovery of tourism sector presents an opportunity to rethink and transform the industry to maximize its contribution to the achievement of the SDGs. Sustainable tourism technology-driven solution to make the industry more resilient to future shocks. Plastic pollution, as I have said, is of serious concern. What is needed is to help those investors understand that allocating capital to waste and recycling is critical to their business as well. Genuine partnership and blended finance could accelerate and catalyze future investment in all stages of waste management for generation and collection to processing. The private source of innovation and expertise in emerging technologies, examine and review material science, different packaging materials to be more recyclable, and how we might evolve them, as well as localized solutions. But dear colleagues, all these initiatives cannot be done by one group alone. It requires our collective and common action. There is a clear strategic necessity for building partnership, and cooperation to provide financial and technical support for countries that need assistance. With developed countries, multilateral development banks, financial institutions, and companies necessary to deliver much needed support with urgency and at scale. To conclude, we have in front of us the opportunity to share our ideas, to embrace transformative partnership for the blue economy, which can generate sustainable economic growth and development through the ocean and sustainable use of our marine resources. I thank you.
Thank you very much to Ambassador Latero, especially for emphasizing that financial aspect. I think when we all go to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt in November, we'll be looking to see that climate finance needle move in the direction of a sustainable blue economy. If it doesn't, we're in trouble. So thank you for emphasizing the financing side. Now I turn to Irene Holkeril, and you are representing the private sector on this panel. So your work to advocate for businesses and business opportunities in Palau, in that context, can you tell us about the realities of the business sector in the cities like Palau, and how the public sector can create a more enabling environment for the business sector?
Good morning, distinguished participants, visitors to Palau. Because I'm from here, I must first say Ali and welcome to Palau. And thank you for this opportunity, SITS organization, for Palau to participate. I'm very happy to share with you what I had done a little research on about the unique realities that the businesses in SITS like Palau, at least the ones for Palau, what we face today, and also what the government, the public sector can do to help. So one of the things that I had researched on was the system of how small businesses are developed in small island developing states. Being born and raised here, I've seen how the tourism industry had grown from the beginning up to now. And climate change is affecting a lot of that besides the pandemic. I've also lived outside of Palau, so I've seen how the communism system works with business, how the capitalism system works in the US and other countries with business. I must say that in Palau we have our own system of how business is actually developed, small businesses. We normally, in our history up to now, we practice what we call Kle'ibelau and Klebelau. Klebelau means being a Palauan, being born and raised in a small island out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Kle'ibelau means partnership, doing things together. So when it comes to the private sector, we do have very unique realities that we face in Palau today. One of them is, how can we make our cultural heritage be an asset to all businesses? And that is a challenge as we are part of the global community now. So it is a continual learning experience, especially for the young people, to embrace culture and be part of the global world, but also be able to maintain our unique identity, including being in business. And two, At the small island developing states, especially for Palau with a small population, we're still working on industry standards. For example, building codes for construction. And we, of course, would be more than happy to learn more about technologies that would help infrastructure and buildings in Palau to be more climate change resilient, typhoons, tide rising. We're still very open to learn those things. Another is learning what quality versus quantity of locally made products and services. That is a reality that after World War II, the people of Palau got used to imports coming from the US and other countries. So our challenges involve our local products and services being forgotten or being put aside. 80% of what we eat and what we use come from outside. So being away from Palau, when I came back a few years ago, I noticed all the pollution. I truly believe that that starts with production. If we go back to eating and using what we locally have as our resources from the ocean and the land, we can also help to reduce pollution. Perhaps bigger countries, developed countries who are listening to us today, can also realize that the more they produce and send to small island developing states actually makes the people in these small island countries become dependent on imported goods, and instead of utilizing and going back to really using what works in this climate, in these environments, our fish and taro. Sure, we can survive on that. Of course, it's nice to have sometimes an ice cream for a treat, but if you think about it, you can make ice cream out of soursop and papaya, other things. So quality versus quantity of locally made products and services. That's a challenge. Another reality that we face in our small island community in Palau is labor and workforce issues. We are a country of about 20,000 people. We sometimes need to hire outside labor to help us. And they come from nearby countries, or experts come from developed countries. Well, small island developing nations are part of the global world. How do we find a way to work together that we can help the local workforce with skills training, whether it's in the IT fields or other ways that they can learn to also be self-sufficient, as well as also include other foreign labor that need to work here, but also have equitable distribution of wealth to everyone without forgetting that the local workforce, the culture that lives here and continues to take care of this little country can survive. Can you imagine coming to Palau and you won't be able to see local people like me wearing a muumuu? It's nice to have unique identities in its small island developing nation. Thank you very much. The other reality in businesses in Palau today are entrepreneurial programs and training opportunities. Yes, we do have our Palau Community College. I don't know how the other small states do with training. Colleges are great, but we also need actual in the field training, entrepreneurial types of programs where young people in small island developing countries can really learn from practical entrepreneurs, people who are in the field building, sewer plants and water treatment plants and real infrastructure that can help not only with livelihoods of people, but also be using renewable energy to help with climate change. These are very important realities that small island developing states still need today. Capital to start small businesses. In Palau, it's not as easy to secure capital for small businesses. We have a US system of applying for a loan to start a small business, and you're applying it to a small island state, where a small island nation of Palau, where everyone knows everybody. We're a small country, so we need to find a way to be able to provide capital that matches with skills training, as well as an evaluation of performance. Young people especially, instead of just supporting schools and helping them to learn the academics and succeed successfully and go outside to college in the United States or Japan or Taiwan, how about maybe some real life training of technology companies investing here so young people can learn while they're here in their own small island countries. They can learn not only to be an employee of a company, but also learn skills to network and start their own small business. Then it will help to bring us back to what we call Klei Palau. People in Palau in our history used to get up in the morning, everyone has something to do, work. Some were making food, some were going to tarapas, some were fishing, some were sewing. Everyone has to have something to do, a work ethic that forms that public-private partnership. So last but not least, with business realities, right now after the pandemic, we all know, in Palau especially, that tourism, our main bread and butter, needs to grow into a diversified economy. So diversification of the economy helps not only the livelihoods of the people to have their own small businesses, strengthen the private sector, but also it would perhaps give an opportunity for the public sector, the government, to start outsourcing jobs, industries, services to the private sector. In Palau, a small population, we have a big government. Sure, we love to support our leaders and we will continue to do so. But in this time of after the pandemic, it would be good to really strengthen our public-private partnerships. And that's what I will leave you today, and I look forward to more discussions on our public-private partnerships, and hopefully we learn also from you, our distinguished participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for being with us for so long. Irene, there was so much productive and provocative thinking there for us. And, I can remember when import substitution became a dirty word back in Fiji in the 1970s and 80s. Look where it got us in terms of health and all the rest. So your ideas are something for this forum to be picking up on later today. With that, can I introduce the Director General of IRENA, Francesco della Camera, who's going to be responding to a question which I've got to ask him here, which is, Venus works to support cities in the transformation towards renewable energies. But how can we de-risk finance to attract more investment to develop ocean-related industries, especially through the lens of the renewable energy sector? Over to you, Director General.
Thank you, Peter, and thank for having me and Arena to this important 3 days work. I think this meeting is very timely, at least for 2 reasons. Globally speaking, we have recently launched our Outlook 2022 that I hope you can easily download from our website to say very clearly how the data and the trend shows that we are not in line with the Paris Agreement pathway. And so we express in this report very clearly the need for accelerating the transition. The direction of travel is very clear. We are moving to a new energy system that will be dominated by renewables and complemented by hydrogen, mainly green hydrogen and sustainable biomass. So the question is not where we are going. The question is the speed of the scale of the transformation if we want really be able to overcome the challenges of climate change and achieve the Paris Agreement goal. The second reason for being very timely is what is happening in the seats. So we have seen the installed capacity of renewables be increased year after year. And in 2021, in our statistics, we can count 5.94 gigawatts of renewables in place. But the fact is the trend in the last year has been slowing down. So it is evident how important it is that we discuss how to change the speed of the scale of our work. And on this, Peter, is fitting very well your question. So how we can be more active on the ground and make things happening. In this respect, the risking of the investment is very, very, very key. And if you allow me, I will try to respond on how is possible the risking environment, presenting what the agency is doing in that context. First of all, the institutional and legal environment aspect. So we are working with the countries to better design their legislation when we talk about the risking, providing for model for the contract. We have this open control, open solar contract that could be helpful to to enhance the capacity to deal with this aspect. We are side by side with countries on design the feed-on tariff scheme, or as we prefer, working on a very well-designed auction. So this is something that we are doing with the countries, and we will continue to do with the countries. It's also important to understand that the market has been designed, has been working, supporting an energy system that was, and still is, centralized and based on fossil fuel. This means that it's also the market has changed rules. When we talk about the contract, if we are talking about long-term contract, if we are talking about contract that are there just for ensuring storage, flexibility, interconnectivity to the grid. So we're also working on design, on the market design is important as on business model. One other aspect is planning. So also the multilateral financial institutions, when they decide to intervene, and also the private companies, when we talk about projects, it's very important these projects are in the context of something that has been planned by the countries, so that it is owned by the countries. In this respect, we as ARENA, we have worked in supporting countries in preparing, in updating the NDCs in the way to Glasgow. We have supported 72 countries in presenting the NDC. And this, we hope, can make the difference, because when we were working through Paris, I know that many of you have been believing that experience. In fact, the NDC is coming to the table, where NDC that was prepared mainly by consultants, not very owned by the government. And this, in terms of implementation, have caused many delay. So the new round now, at least the one we have been enjoying working with the government, we have the possibility to say that the planning is really owned by the government. So the project that fitting the planning may have an advantage in terms of de-risking. We have been able to assess the potential of 44 countries in terms of renewable potential. This is also a very important aspect when we talk planning and de-risking. And concerning the seeds, one of our most successful initiatives, the Lighthouse Initiative, and also the compact that we've been able to build in the way to the high-level dialogue in New York last September. So this instrument makes us to understand that future initiative in terms of projects have a framework where they can fit and decrease the risk of the investment. Two last things. I don't want to be long, so at least my messages can be very clear in what I wish to say. One initiative that we have in terms of investment is the Climate Investment Platform. The Climate Investment Platform is an initiative that we launched together with the UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, and Sustainable Energy for All, in collaboration with the Green Climate Fund. We as ARENA, we did our part. We now have 330 partners. All the multilateral financial institutions are there. Important development agency, important development bank, private sector, all are there. What we are doing also, we are collecting projects, because often we have heard that the money is there, but there are no projects. So we try to start to collect projects through our digital platform. We have 14 digital platforms that are in place. I strongly invite you to present ideas for projects. We will connect with you. We will work together for raising the number of projects we have. We have already 300 projects. 60 of them are already, in our point of view, bankable. This is an important opportunity. I really call you to use this instrument, present idea, and working together with us to have a project that may be ready to find the interest of investor, multilateral financial institutions, other. One other initiative that is similar, and I will explain by reference, is the Energy Transition Accelerating Financing. This is an initiative like the CIP. The only difference is that the partner commit an envelope of money. So we have money that, as ARENA, we can try to utilize for funding projects. One first leg of this platform that will work as an umbrella has been the commitment of the UAE government to provide $400 million. But we are also, and this will be spent through the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development. And this platform is, with this umbrella, important because we are also working with the Nordic Development Fund, with the Finnish financial institutions, with the Asian Infrastructure Bank, with the Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, to join this umbrella that provide us for ready money to be spent if the projects are there, and the projects are there. My last information is that we have been asked by the Indonesian government to organize an investment forum in the occasion of the G20 Ministerial Energy Transition meeting. This will be the first week of September. So please help us to go to that meeting with so many projects we have dealing with the seeds. So please do it. And ending a call for the private partnership. We as ARENA, we are a very unique animal in the sense that we are the only global energy entity. the only one that's worked globally. And we work open to private sector. We have established 6 collaborative framework on all the topics that are relevant for the energy transition. In all this collaborative framework, the private company may be there, the private sector can be there, working with us. We are working for standard for green hydrogen, and we are working with the private sector on this. So please, come working with us. We are ready to work with everyone. We want really provide for the city what the city deserves. So the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thanks for repeating that refrain. We've got plenty of money, but there are no projects. Because, you know, folks, that is why my hair fell out. I've been hearing that since being a rural development officer in Fiji in the early 1970s, all my life, right after being president of the executive board of UNDP. People say, we've got all the money you need. You just haven't got the projects. We know that that is BS because we come from the field, right? Yeah, just think of sewage. I can give me 12 hours and I can list 10,000 towns in our region that need sewage projects. There's all your projects. Spend your money on them. You know, there's far too much talk like that goes on about, you know, they've got all the money and we haven't got the projects. So if they've got so much money, send out an army of project writers to write up the realities of this world in development. Because there's plenty of projects, folks. Don't be held back by that old sword. So to our last speaker, look, I've done such a terrible job of moderation. I know I'll never be invited again to be a moderator. That's fine, and I apologize to the next panel. But we've got a very interesting speaker, Dr. Hide Sakaguchi, and let's give him the floor now. Thanks, Hide.
Thank you, Peter. It's my great honor to be here with you, with distinguished guest this morning. Not to repeat what we should go, but let me introduce. It's a small project, but it's practical, ongoing project which is done in Japan, especially in the most marine biodiversity is hot, and which is in Suruga Bay in Japan. What we, Ocean Policy Research Institute under Sasukawa Peace Foundation is enhancing is to let fishermen put the fixed net which can catch fish in a day or 2-3 days waiting, but the net has sensors to identify the species, the amount of fish, potentially the number of fish. And that information is open for local market and local seafood restaurants and local consumers. And then the local consumers can register when and where and at which species of fish they want to have. And then eventually the matching with the data which is open from fisherman side and from consumer side match, and then decide the fishermen start unloading, landing, depending on the information from the consumer. And then that kind of small business works very well because it can prevent overfishing, and also it can prevent waste, and also it can prevent the fuel for the transportation, because each individual, consumer directly, from the information of the fisherman has. And this is very small example for sustainable fisheries and also blue economies. But what is important is mass production or over pursuing industry. We have learned in the past decades destroyed everything. So in that sense, the example I just explained to you is a very local, small, practical example. And the local fishermen and the local restaurant, local market match together to minimize waste in terms of many aspects. But I think this scheme we have already done in Japan requires very small equipment, just sensor attached on the fisherman's fixed net and internet information. That's all. And what I want here is this kind of small business, but which is for sustainable fisheries, eventually for blue economies, can be applied in seeds. And this is a message from me. It's very short, but please try to contact me or our colleagues, to exercise this, small local technique, but which is very effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sakaguchi-san. Thank you for being so concise and so relevant in what you have to say. Look, we've seriously overrun our time. As I said before, apologies to the next panel. But I have to do two things. Firstly, whoever the organizers of this event are, in terms of local people, I just want to say that this incredible display in us, Irene talked about the uniqueness of our individual cultures. And when you look at some of these pieces, that any museum in the world would be just so proud to have so many of these pieces. I can see about 6 of them, which are just outstanding, which is this indigenous culture doing what they do so well here, which is this intricate carving. So congratulations to whoever brought our attention to this amazing skill that exists here in Palau. Secondly, I was asked to say something about the UN Ocean Conference. This will be my final words, and the panel will forgive me that we don't have time for our chat, which is UN Ocean Conference, 27 June to 1st July in Lisbon. It's a SIDS conference. Why do I say that? SIDS demanded SDG 14. The UN Ocean Conference is about the integrity of implementation of SDG 14. So be there in numbers, folks. As far as the investment is concerned, there is a special Sustainable Blue Economy Investment Forum, which is being put on by the co-hosts, Portugal and Kenya, on the 28th of June. So again, it's a continuation of this meeting, the 28th of June in Lisbon, as a special event of the UN Ocean Conference. You'll remember that on the morning of the 28th of June is that SIDS, Sustainable Blue Economy Interactive Dialogue. So this investment forum is in the afternoon. And I know that there's a SIDS side event on the Sustainable Blue Economy and SIDS being planned by OHRLS and DESA for the UN Ocean Conference as well. So keep your eyes on that date to be confirmed at this stage. But the other thing is that partnerships, of course, is central to the work of the UN Ocean Conference. Member states, in their communal wisdom, and there is such a thing, member states have, for the theme of the conference, mandated that it should be based on stock taking, in other words, honesty, and on science, and on innovations, and finally, it must be based on partnerships. So it'll be a very relevant meeting, and this meeting here has been very relevant in terms of building up towards Lisbon. I want to thank the panelists. Fantastic set of ideas there to be captured, have been captured by the organizers, and thanks for your patience, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for that beachside chat. And now we will go right into a presentation from Mr. Paul Holthus, President of the World Ocean Council, so that we can then move on with the rest of the day's events. Mr. Holthus, as soon as you're ready, you can come and take the podium.
Great. Thanks, Dishka, and thanks so much to the to the organizers. I'm going to start, and I know Peter Thompson has to leave, our special envoy for the ocean. I want to start, Peter, with an announcement that just came out in the press in Spain yesterday. The city of Barcelona, the port of Barcelona, has invited the World Ocean Council to be hosted in Barcelona to work with them to create the world's blue economy capital. So we have now a major city in a major country wanting to work with SIDS, with all the ocean countries around the world to really create the blue economy capital of the world. It's going to be a whole suite of educational, innovation, business development efforts here to really take the blue economy to the next level through that commitment. So I just wanted to share that with you, and we'll announce it also later this week at this event. So what I want to do very quickly then, as we're pressed for time, the World Ocean Council is the global blue economy business and investment organization. We bring together the industries of the world to focus on innovation, to focus on sustainable development, and to advance the ability for the ocean and our islands to really provide for a sustainable future, dealing, of course, also with climate issues. I myself, it may not look like it, but I've spent most of my life in the Pacific and Asia region. So I firstly want to say aloha from Hawaii to all of you. And it's good to be back in Palau, a place where I did much work back in the 1980s. So it's been almost 40 years since I first came here. I've been here many times since then. Let me quickly share with you the work we've done at the World Ocean Council to help focus on business development in SIDS. And if I could have the next slide, please. So we have worked here to produce this report. I'm not going to go into detail. The time we have available to really give you a sense of what we've covered, looking at SDG 14, looking at the key issues, barriers, constraints, opportunities, case studies, and I have undertaken a major survey on the on business development in SIDS across the world in terms of the funding, the mentality, developing the synergies, the communication, sorry, I'm advancing here. So next slide. In terms of where we need to focus our work in a series of specific areas that we can that we can provide guidelines and a roadmap for. I'll see. Oh. So, and I want to really acknowledge Irene's input to the previous panel. She was telling it like it is. As she said, the reality check. We need the business people of the region, of the SID, to really help define these barriers, these constraints, the priorities, the kinds of things she was talking about: education, training, innovation, government support, public-private partnerships. So these are the kind of recommendations coming out of the report. And we have a series of case studies here that we won't go into in detail right now. One from each of the three main SIDS regions, this one on wave energy and desalination in partnership with a company, government, local communities. And as we've developed these case studies, the best practices that have come out, you can see them highlighted here. I will let you be able to look at this in more detail as the report comes out, as this presentation is made available, particularly focusing, of course, on communities and engagement of stakeholders. In this example, another example is in, so this was in Cape Verde, another example in the Dominican Republic, the case study with Blue Finance and bringing together conservation, business development, and the linkages there in marine protected areas. We have, as I say, from each of these case studies, and there are many, many more that have been put together in the report, a series of best practices that emerged from that. The third case study, just to highlight here, the Manoataka Partnership. Proud to say this has been instigated by a World Ocean Council member company, Swire Pacific, a major shipping company operating in the Asia Pacific region and particularly important in the region, working to bring out waste from small islands, something we dreamed about doing back when I was at SPREP in the 80s, and having a shipping company that's taking waste out to be brought to recycling facilities in other parts of the world. So really that, when we talk about public-private partnerships, this is exactly the kind of delivery on that innovation and leadership from companies working well with countries, governments, municipalities, and regional organizations can deliver. As I say, we undertook a major survey, and this survey is still open and available, and we will be making a link available to that survey for those of you that would like to add in your input, particularly focusing on the role of the private sector, of course, but wanting other stakeholders from government, from civil society, academia, research, etc., to contribute to that. I've highlighted here a few of the key points that have come out from the private sector in terms of priorities, but you can see across all stakeholder groups, private, government, civil society, the funding, the resourcing is the key aspect. And we all know this, and this has come up already several times today. As you can see, some of the other points highlighted from the private sector in terms of their priorities. And again, I'd really acknowledge and say that's the check things that we need to focus on to respond to and work with the private sector, and that's what we work to do at the World Ocean Council. So clarity on best practices, communicating the value of the products and services, really looking at the specific needs in specific countries, but also the linkages between areas. So let me just summarize here some of the key recommendations as we wrap up this report. These are the kinds of opportunities and priorities that are emerging from this work of many interviews across the stakeholder groups, the survey, the case study work. So really pulling together the needs to connect with the supporting organizations, the investors and the funders, putting these packages, these public-private partnerships together, the kinds of information that we need to attract and engage the investors. And we at the World Ocean Council have an Ocean Investor Forum that regularly meets monthly, a roundtable that meets virtually. We need to connect then those SIDS Island business development needs, a lot of focus on small and medium enterprises. As the president said, we need jobs. We need to keep our kids, our local talent in place. We have that same problem in Hawaii. We need to provide the opportunities for our island young talent to stay in the islands, maybe to go away and get training and education, but come back and start those jobs. We need to facilitate that for all of us. So identify those partnerships, make sure innovators, entrepreneurs have the opportunities in their small island home states and countries. Bring the government partnerships together with the businesses, with the enterprises, with the trainers, with the educators, and really create that networking and that platform that can connect up locally, at a country level, at a region, and here as we're doing today, across the world. We have a whole series of other parts of a roadmap that I'm just going to skip through in the interest of time. It's in the report, which is being finalized, as I say, and I will, this will all be available as we wrap this up. Really providing a roadmap, working with UNOHR LLS as we move forward to develop and deliver these ways forward. This part of the Samoa pathway that we all need to see happening, and that the Global Business Forum, the Global Business Network, really provides the gathering place for us all as we work on these. So with that, I'll stop and thank for the great partnership in terms of partnerships with UNOHR LLS. With all of you, we need to focus on sustainable business development for sustainable ocean development and a sustainable climate as we move forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul, for that presentation, and we will have the opportunity to unpack some of those issues as we move over the course of the day with our 3 sessions. So I will suggest that we sort of shorten the coffee break to about 10 minutes and resume at 11 so that we can then start with the next session on sustainable tourism. So with that, I'll invite you to go and get some refreshments, and then we'll start back at 11. Thank you, everyone.
Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, first let me thank you for joining us at this forum for this important discussion on tourism and COVID recovery. I was gonna give a little insight into why we're vulnerable, but you all know this, so that part of my speech I'll cut. But just to give you an insight as where we are, before the global shutdown by COVID-19 pandemic, tourism was one of the fastest growing economic sectors, generating unparalleled direct and indirect employment and accounting for nearly a third of many of our GDP in most cities, that is. Considering the intersectoral trade and the welfare effect, it is also an important driver for us for sustainable development. Tourism, as you all know it, is critical for our foreign exchange earnings. A significant portion of our export, food, energy, and other basic necessities comes from this sector and are imported. Therefore, tourism is perhaps, and not perhaps, is an integral part of the source of public finance, investment, and servicing our debt in small island developing states. If we look at the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, prior to the pandemic, in 2019, SIDS attracted some 44 million inbound visitors, with most arrivals originating out of single source country or region. For example, the United States accounted for 60 to 80% of arrivals into the Caribbean. Australia and New Zealand contributed to 50% of arrivals in the Pacific, and 60% of arrivals in the East were from Europe. So you see the dilemma we are facing. Once there's a lockdown, and this is a single source market for us, we're screwed, as they say in the game. So in 2020, COVID-19 pandemic brought tourism industry to a standstill, over 70% below what it was in 1990 level. So this limited domestic tourism in cities that we have in terms of trying to move between islands is not sufficient for us to make up for that. So our only source is that single market, external market in the US, whether it's in North America, it's in Europe, or it's in Asia. Just to give you an insight, the pandemic has placed over 100 million jobs directly at risk worldwide, with even further repercussions on ancillary industries such as food, transport, hospitality, construction, and even in recreation. We're now seeing secondary contractions services, which also attribute we must ensure equitable access to vaccines everywhere in the world to ensure safe travel. At least fully vaccinated. So, as they say, no one is safe until everyone is. So, I hope that with this, we can move towards having full vaccination so we can resume travel. At the same time, restriction, quarantine measures, testing requirements are not overly onerous on visitors, of course, because we need the tourists to come to our islands, of course. So we need to have more vaccination passports, the use of digital technology, which is key, that have proven to be effective. I've seen this done in countries like the Maldives. So these are some of the things perhaps we need to do to ensure that we have good guidelines also, guidelines that are coherent, that allows access, but at the same time does not allow the spread of COVID-19. As tourist arrival rebound, the workforce must also be better equipped. One of the other challenges we have to face, because we're having now an influx of tourists returning to our island. Investing in skills, training, including social digital technologies, can further diversify and expand the industry, ascending its potential even to greater heights. As an inclusive approach, we should also look at rural areas, local communities, and including all marginalized groups. The reality is, colleagues, the dire economic situation caused by the pandemic in SIDS also demonstrated that the international framework for assistance support is certainly ineffective and based on an archaic criteria. As a result, SIDS are advocating, and we're doing this every day, for a multi-dimensional vulnerability index to be adopted this year, which could be utilized to better direct the development aid and relief to where it is more needed, especially at a time of crisis like we're now facing. In terms of sustainable recovery for the citizen industry, in reviving tourism, we must also think about potential improvements. Not managed effectively, tourism can have a detrimental impact on the environment, community, and the economy. So sustainability is an important consideration. There are a number of context measures that can also be considered in order to make the industry greener and bluer. In line with our commitment under the Paris Agreement, we are striving to achieve carbon neutral by 2050. This also includes transport. Some of the things we could do is eliminate single-use plastics from the industry, ensure stricter regulation on waste management, including on cruise ships. This is also a great scope for expanding the conservation and protection of natural resources through tourism, which is particularly important for small island developing states and their important role for the protection of our biodiversity. So, however, one main obstacle to better understand this whole issue we see is the whole issue of the interlinkage between the tourism industry and the lack of reliable disaggregated data regarding the industry in SIDS. These data challenges are cross-cutting issues we need to address. And they can be addressed for us because we have a roadmap for this, and it can be addressed in the small pathway. And that's where we need to address it if we need partnership. So colleagues, I hope that today's discussion we can take a deeper dive into some of these issues and distill solutions that can be implemented that support our partners for the SIDS. So as the chair of OASIS, we stand ready to work with OHRLS, UNDESA, WTO, and all other stakeholders to advance progress on this issue, especially in the lead up to the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States. I thank you for this opportunity.
I thank Ambassador Hunt for those remarks. The chair of OASIS, thank you kindly. It's my privilege now to invite to the podium Ambassador Vanessa Fraser, the permanent representative of the Republic of Malta to the United Nations. For those of us who also are unfamiliar, Ambassador Fraser was the co-chair of the United Nations Steering Committee on SEEDS Partnership, together with Antigua and Barbuda up until last year. She's motto, of course, is a small island like us, and Ambassador Fraser is a friend of small island developing states. Madam, you have the podium.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege and an honor to formally open this year's session of the SIDS Global Business Network, which shall focus on tourism in the context of the COVID-19 recovery. I'm pleased to be speaking after His Excellency Conrad Hunt from Antigua and Barbuda, a country with which Malta shares a very strong partnership. This strong partnership has emanated from our joint role as former co-chairs of the Steering Committee on Partnerships for SIDS for the years 2020 and 2021, a tenure which brought to fore the challenges ushered in by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our commitment to the crucial role that partnerships hold in the fulfillment of the aims and objectives of the Samoa Pathway, and in the broader context, the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals shall not waver, which is why we are delighted to continue our cooperation and collaboration with the UN OHR LLS and the SIDS Global Business Network. Allow me to share a few highlights of our work in this context. Malta is proud to have hosted on 10 September 2020, as part of its series of webinars under the auspices of the same steering committee, a webinar entirely dedicated to the tourism sector for SIDS in the context of the pandemic and how partnerships can be fostered to propel resilience in this regard. In addition to this event, the steering committee also placed tourism under the spotlight at its annual Global Multi-Stakeholder Dialogue on SIDS Partnerships on 9th July 2021. These are but two examples from many of our dedication to this important topic. As a small island state in the Mediterranean, we know all too well the important driving force that tourism holds to our nation and to other small island nations. And we are therefore pleased to see that this topic is reconvening us here today in Palau, another small island nation in the Pacific. It is also a pleasure to see that the Our Oceans Conference series has continued in its trajectory. Malta was honored to have hosted the fourth Our Oceans Conference in 2017. Tourism is, of course, and by far, the most important contributor to SIDS' national economies, foreign exchange inflows, and employment. Already facing substantial challenges from the effects of climate change, resulting in impending loss of beaches, coastal inundation, degradation of coastal ecosystems, saline intrusion, and damage to critical infrastructures, the pandemic wreaked havoc with an unprecedented disruption to travel, affecting both tourist destinations as well as source markets for tourism, bringing them to a standstill. The devastating repercussions on SIDS have been enormous, particularly on employment and businesses. This has affected disproportionately women and youth, who tend to be the most hard hit within the tourism industry across SIDS. By virtue of the fact that tourism is linked to virtually all other sectors of the economy and society, this situation has impacted progress towards the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, stalling processes already in place, hindering advances, and, in the worst-case scenarios, even reversing such progress. It is with this background in mind that we have to transform challenges into opportunities. Partnerships should continue to lie at the crux of our discussions and of our eventual policies. We have in front of us a plethora of lessons learned and best practices that have the potential to be scaled up to a national, regional, and global level. Using Malta as an example,
For the past 2 years, we have dedicated our efforts towards sustaining the industry through several schemes to ensure the ecosystem could weather the storm. Efforts were also directed towards the recovery process. COVID-19 provided us with the perfect opportunity to target the upskilling and reskilling of idle tourism workforce, which was done through a €5 million scheme, which was fully subscribed to within days of its being launched. The brain drain experienced in the sector during the past 2 years and the effects this will have on the industry are still to be determined. It is for this reason that we are planning ahead. By 2025, Malta will be implementing a €40 million investment in the development of a state-of-the-art campus for the Institute of Tourism Studies, which will offer a wide range of courses to support the training requirements of enrolled cohorts. We did not stop there. A new tourism strategy for the years 2021 to 2030, entitled Recover, Rethink, Revitalise, was launched in December of last year. The strategy presents an opportunity, at an important juncture in Malta's development, to allow the country to re-establish its tourism industry on a sounder footing and in line with international ideals and commitments in the field of sustainable development and climate change. In parallel, Malta is embarking on a number of initiatives to identify best practices in sustainability and to develop a system of indicators to measure and monitor the sustainability of tourism, which are adjusted to Malta's realities. The need for sustainable planning and management is imperative for the industry to survive as a whole. Likewise, digital readiness is also an important factor. Accompanying the tourism strategy, Malta put forward its own digital roadmap for tourism, which looks towards setting the right environment to enable investment and strengthen among all stakeholders the use of the latest available technologies. All these efforts aim to elevate Malta's tourism offer to one increasingly based on the universal delivery of a sustainable quality service and product. It is in this context I look forward to an enriching discussion today that will allow us to share our experiences of how the COVID-19 pandemic impacted our tourism sectors, which measures and partnerships have been effective and which not, with the ultimate objective being identification of those partnerships that can strengthen the resilience of this crucial sector. Thank you.
I thank Ambassador Fraser for those remarks. Excellencies, I now invite our meeting to a set of 2 videos presentation, which are meant to be scene setting for us. We will be hearing from the United Nations World Tourism Organization. The first video will be a message from Mr. Zurab Paloli-Kashvili, the Secretary General of WTO, and that will be followed by a presentation by Ms. Zoristra Urosevic, the Executive Director of WTO. So I'll request the technician to please play the video for us, and I will request our panelists to turn as well, because the presentation will be behind them. Thank you.
Your Excellency President Surangel S. Raps Jr., Acting Under General Secretary Heidi Schroeder-Fox, the ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to be part of this important forum. This comes at a vital time for Palau and for small island states everywhere. For these destinations, tourism is a real lifeline. It drives economic growth, and it provides jobs and other opportunities, including for women and youth. The restart of tourism brings hope. Small islands in the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia and the Pacific are among the destinations to show the fastest recovery. In some cases, tourist arrivals are already above pre-pandemic levels. As your sector recovers, we must build on our great progress. Tourism is one of the pillars of the blue economy. It plays a key role in protecting the oceans, the very thing that makes small island states such popular destinations. Our organization will continue to support the transformation of tourism. We will promote public and private partnerships and help direct investments to where they can make a real difference. Today's forum is an excellent platform to share ideas, and it's a chance to place tourism at the center of development plans. I wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you soon. I'm very happy that 2 years ago, Palau became our very new and very strong member state, and I'm very happy to address you from Madrid.
Thank you for inviting UNWTO to be part of this forum. And thank you to the United Nations Office of the High Representative for Least Developing Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, to the government of Palau for hosting this important event. Devoting a session to tourism shows that the vital role of our sector for small island destinations. Tourism accounts for over 30% of total exports for most, and in some, it is as high as 80%. Tourism is also a major employer in seeds, in particular for women, youth, and informal workers. It delivers direct and indirect multiplier effects through its broad value chain. For this reason, tourism is a real lifetime for many peoples in the planet. The pandemic hit small island developing states very hard. However, seeds in the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia, and the Pacific are among the destinations showing the fastest recovery. In some cases, arrival numbers are already above pre-pandemic levels. As international tourism bounces back, seeds can take advantage of the unique assets to further diversify their tourism sector, and tourism experiences in seeds fit beautifully the new trend and desire of the post-COVID traveler. They are well placed to attract new markets as well as to develop products related to domestic, rural gastronomy, or wellness tourism. As part of the recovery, tourism will play a key role in the regeneration of coastal and marine ecosystems. This will build more resilience and protect communities. Ladies and gentlemen, sustainability is at the heart of UNWTO's mission. We know that tourism represents 40% of the blue economy worldwide. So, from the different programs we unfold, the One Planet Network to accelerate sustainable consumption and production, to the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative to tackle plastic pollution, and the most recently Glasgow Declaration to fight the climate emergency. I urge you to be an active part of these important initiatives. Measuring to manage better is also key. This is reflected through the UNWTO-led initiative Measuring of Sustainability of Tourism that is going to be approved, hopefully, by the UN Statistical Commission in a year's time, and the International Network of Sustainable Tourism Observatories. As data is critical to support recovery, I invite you to explore the UNWTO Tourism Dashboard for the most recent data and trends. In order to build back better and stronger, UNWTO will continue to support the transition to a more innovative and sustainable sector. We will help foster public-private partnership and promote green and blue investment. We are also stepping up our work supporting education and jobs and enhancing data and market intelligence. At every step, the private sector will be a key partner in accomplishing our goals. The forum represents an excellent platform for bridging between public and private sector actors. It is also a chance to exchange knowledge, learn from each other, and foster collaboration among all stakeholders. I wish you a very fruitful discussion and really very sorry not to be with you today.
We thank the United Nations World Tourism Organization for their contribution to this conversation. And I will now move on to the next part of our of our meeting, which is we will also now see two more video presentations, and they are for partnerships presentation. The first will be from Ms. Megan Morikawa. She's from the Iberostar Global Sustainability Director. And the second will be from Mr. Glenn Craig. He's from the Vanuatu Business Resilience Council and the Director of Kontiki Finance. So I will now request our technician once again to please present to us these two videos, which are on partnerships.
My name is Dr. Megan Morikawa, and I'm the Global Director of Sustainability at Iberostar Group, a multinational tourism group with a strong commitment towards the ocean. I'm here to speak today to a vision where coastal tourism not only works to decarbonize their businesses and engage with their supply chains, but also extend their sphere of governance to regeneratively restoring and contributing to their destinations. For us at Iberostar, this is seen as a plan to reach carbon neutrality across our 100 hotels in 16 countries by 2030. First, by including both our operations and supply chain in scope, making a benchmark of 1 million metric tons of CO2 footprint in 2019. Then by decarbonizing both our operations and supply chain to the best of our ability. But because the renewable energy transition in our destinations and our supply chains face challenges beyond our influence, we expect the need to still compensate carbon by 2030. That's why we're also committed to compensating the remaining carbon by protecting and restoring nature in our destinations, with a focus on blue carbon markets that we aspire to be catalyst funds for other models of financing through tourism for the expansion of protected areas. We also believe engagement in our supply chain must focus on the oceans, which is why our commitment to blue food is one of our strategic pillars. We've committed to sourcing 100% of our seafood from responsible sources by 2025, defined as seafood that is certified, rated, or in an improvement program. Throughout the pandemic, we went from roughly 8% responsible sourcing in 2019 to 70% globally in 2021, representing around 200 species from 14 FAO regions. This change demonstrated to us that we can both embrace global complexity and make changes rapidly. Finally, we're working to embrace this model of regenerative tourism. We're also extending our sphere of influence beyond our operations and supply chains and towards our destinations through a commitment to coastal health. We're building the business case around it, working to link the benefits of coral reef protection and restoration to reduce flooding incidents and beach erosion. We're working to improve the quality of the product by tackling nutrient pollution and overfishing, by establishing and engaging in MPAs in front of our properties, or working to improve the health and well-being of our employees and clients by working towards green plot ratios with native species that have been demonstrated to improve physical and mental well-being throughout the celebration of nature. Yet we're well aware none of our actions make impact until they are further improved upon and adapted as norms as to scale in our destinations. If we want to build a case for life and ecosystems in our oceans to be valued alive because of tourism and not as commodities to be extracted and managed, then we must ensure we further develop literacy in our respective agendas and build collaborative and regenerative models. One multi-stakeholder partnership that has been a guiding part is responsible tourism through the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program through UNWTO and UNEP. As a signatory of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, which is advancing a circular economy of plastics, and the Glasgow Declaration, which is accelerating our climate action, both provide good ways to accelerate action through voluntary commitments. We hope that in this pivotal decade for sustainable development, that tourism and oceans are not antagonistic, one extracting from the other, but rather catalytic, where tourism drives its protection and restoration. We're ready to do our part and welcome this and other necessary catalytic changes for our pathway towards a healthy and resilient ocean. Thank you.
Greetings from Port Vila in Vanuatu. I'm Glenn Craig and I'm the chairperson of the Vanuatu Business Resilience Council. It gives me great honour to speak here today at the SID Global Business Network Forum. I wish I could attend in person in Palau. Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, along with distinguished guests and my colleagues that are there in person today. I'm sorry I don't get to meet you, but I'm sure we'll have an opportunity further down the road. Vanuatu has suffered greatly from the loss of tourism business due to the COVID-19. Vanuatu is rated the most at-risk country in the world to natural disaster, as rated by the UN Risk Index, so it already had its challenges from climate change, especially through increasing loss of coastal erosion and cyclones and the like. When COVID hit, we were the first country in the world that had to deal with the dual disaster of both a natural hurricane hitting our shores and also dealing with COVID and the borders being shut, which means all the international responders could not assist us. The tourism economy in Vanuatu accounts for between 60 and 70% of the GDP of the country through direct and indirect means. It's a significant earner. We are the closest country to Australia. We're an hour and 50 minutes flight from Brisbane, so we're a big market for the Australians. We're 3 hours from Auckland, and then on our southern line, we have New Caledonia. So the French market through the New Caledonian community is very strong for us for tourism as well. In fact, it's our number 2. When the borders closed, we were instantly left with 3,000 to 4,000 workers in our workforce that were left without jobs. The key challenge that we had was as a SIDS, and as my colleagues know in the Pacific Island countries as well, particularly in our region, is the lack of access for funding to keep our products and services alive during this time. Most business and most tour operators carry some form of financial institution debt, whether or not it's mortgages, business loans, overdraft facilities. That capital times like this, when you have to repay those facilities, are very tough. The financial institutions, through the directive of the Reserve Bank of Vanuatu, did give repayment holidays. That was significant in terms of ensuring that businesses did not have to meet those obligations in the meantime. But they still had to be paid. All we've done is we've moved that debt down the line. Another problem that we had is lack of technical capacity to advise our tourism product on other things that they could pivot into. That was an issue because of border closure. So these are the unique challenges that face us in the SIDS. We've been grateful for the support of donor partners of Australia, New Zealand, China, France, Japan that have helped us out during these times. But for the average tour operator, it's been very, very tough to get through this time. We've had the challenge of a lot of our workers being taken overseas for the seasonal worker programs in Australia and New Zealand. So that's the RSE and the SWT programs, which has taken approximately 6,000 of our workers. Many of those are our qualified chefs. They're our resort front office managers. They're our tour operators, our jet boat drivers. They're the people that make the tourism economy work and the products and services what they are. As a necessity to earn money and send back to their families, they have been going in droves overseas. The challenge we have to reopen our borders is that we have a distinct lack of manpower now when the time comes to do it. Vanuatu government announced on the 1st of July that we will be reopening our borders, and it's a big concern of the industry that we don't have the manpower capacity to man the products and services that we need to generate the outcome that we need to. In terms of things that we've done to keep alive, we have introduced, or to be ready, we have introduced safe business operating standards where the BBRC, along with the Chamber of Commerce, have been constantly training tourism hotels and resorts in how to do COVID-safe operations. We've been collaborating with the Ministry of Health to work out the best way forward when the borders do open to ensure it's been done in a safe manner and how we communicate that to the tourism operators. Those have been some of the success stories. The economic stimulus package from the Vanuatu government gave a wage subsidy of $150 per employee that was kept on in the tourism sector, and that was actually in fact across all sectors. That's been ongoing for the last 18 months. It has helped, but it hasn't been enough to retain as many of the staff as what we like. It's going to be a challenging time post-COVID. We don't know how long it's going to carry on for, the different variants that are going to be out there, and how we account for that once the borders open. But with the support of the government and our donor partners, and the propensity to deal with the challenges as a SIDS member, we will get through it all. With organisations like the Vanuatu Business Resilience Council, which is connected to the Connecting Business Initiative, we've been able to build a more resilient private sector. It has had its issues. It hasn't been without its challenges. But I can say that we still have 80% of the tourism businesses in Vanuatu that existed pre-COVID that will be ready to open 1 July. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you very much, the presenters, for those presentation. I will now move on to our interactive dialogue session. We're very fortunate indeed this morning that we have with us three distinguished panelists. We have the Honorable Fekit Utoikamanu, the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Tourism from the Kingdom of Tonga. We also have Mr. Christopher Crocker, the Chief Executive Officer of the Pacific Tourism Organization, and Ms. Caroline Nyeridis. She's the sole proprietor and financial consultants who open business service here in Palau. This session is meant for us to ask questions to our panelists, and there will also be opportunity for the members of our, for the delegates who may wish to raise questions or make comments on this topic to have their views as well towards the end of this session. Mr. Johnson here will be keeping our time as we progress. Now, I want to ask the first question to the Honorable Minister, Dr. Kamanu. Honorable Minister, looking at the ongoing experience of the Kingdom of Tonga in relation to the pandemic, which, like many small island developing states, has been severely affected, and together with, of course, the effect of the disaster, volcanic eruption, would you be kind to inform the discussion today of the particular challenges that you are currently facing and the type of opportunities that you are seeing for building a more resilient tourism sector in the kingdom? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sai, for the opportunity for me to participate in this morning's session on tourism. And just before I go to the response, I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces around the table, and welcome you to the Pacific. And I would like to begin my remarks by noting the importance of meetings such as this to bring focus to the plight of small island developing states, particularly in the key economic sector that holds for many of our small island developing states the most potential for economic growth because it is connected to so many other sectors that support our economies. As tourism-dependent countries, the impact of the pandemic has been devastating, and in the case of Tonga, the added extreme vulnerabilities to climate change has forced the industry to its knees. Let me create a backdrop specific to Tonga so that we may come away from this session with not only a general understanding of the impact of COVID on SIDS, but also get a snapshot of how we as a nation view the future for this sector, which is based on how confident we are in resolving our particular challenges and the opportunities for building a more resilient tourism sector. Pre-pandemic, the tourism industry in Tonga was, compared to other SIDS, still in its infancy, concentrated on air arrivals from New Zealand, Australia, and the United States through Fiji. The growth in tourism is from a relatively low base of 50,000 20 years ago to 130,000 before COVID. Annually, 65% of these arrivals are VFR, visiting friends and relatives, reflecting the increasing diaspora in these countries of origin. And as of today, the diaspora members are about 85,000 in New Zealand, 40,000 in Australia, and 75,000 in the US. And the balance of tourism arrivals included mostly special interest, whale-watching, professional travel, intergovernmental, environmental, and ocean-based, generally originating in the same proportions from these three nations, and a growing interest from Europe. The snapshot is significant because it represents the realities of where we are on the tourism crisis map. And even though much of the world is in a recovery phase from COVID, the global economy is growing with life returning to normal, albeit a new normal in many parts of the world. It is not the case for SIDS, and it's not. At the onset of the global pandemic, the concern with the inherent weaknesses of the health systems and its inadequacy to deal with any COVID cases led to a decision to close Tonga's border from March 2020 through to March 2022. And the immediate impact was there were no tourists for 2 years, which rippled through the small, medium-sized operators who only had the small domestic market to utilize their facilities. The situation was exacerbated more recently with the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcanic eruption triggered tsunami, which put a nail in the coffin for the tourism industry in Tonga Tapu, Ha'apai, and Eua. And today I'm reminded of the early press conference days following the volcanic eruption, when after the initial shock of the tsunami passed, and the question was, what is the strategy going forward for the tourism industry in Tonga, given that it already is in dire straits and now the natural disaster has destroyed most of the facilities? My response was immediate and intuitive, stating that our priorities was the humanitarian crisis we were faced with. But whilst it was sufficient and reasonable response at the time, it was obvious that it would have to be addressed sooner rather than later. The global recovery, which is being enjoyed in many parts of the world, is not being felt in Tonga and in many other parts of the Pacific, especially as the pandemic is not the only disaster that our nations are faced with. Climate change, wherever the cause originates from, is one of our biggest challenges. And the decision that we must make, crisis response first, recovery second, and growth third, and these decisions have consequences that are challenges in themselves. And our priority and immediate challenge for protecting the population, and during the 2 years of closure, we have achieved one of the highest vaccination rates for nations, and the advent of the pandemic on Tonga shores has been less destructive. Although I'm sure that everyone can agree that any loss of life due to natural calamities, including the pandemic, it's a tragic result for any nation. So Tonga continues to manage the worst health effects of the pandemic, particularly its impact on the health system and the mental anxiety that is prevalent in our populations and the future of our economies. So we are now faced with the challenge of rebuilding the infrastructure that is vital for tourism economy, to rebuild the industry. And noting there's a dependency on policies of other nations relating to their borders, I might take the opportunity to extend our appreciation to nations represented around this table for the immediate impactful responses to issues of commonality, including facilitating repatriation of our people through your borders, also create the opportunities for us as a nation to rebuild based on sustainable principles a resilient tourism sector that in due time supports our goal to reopen our borders safely. And I think I'll stop there and then answer any questions that might arise from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Honorable Minister. It is indeed a testimony to the enormity of the work that you are doing in terms of the recovery of not only the tourism sector, but Tonga as a whole from COVID and, of course, from the natural disaster. Thank you very much. I will now request Mr. Crocker, the Chief Executive Officer of the Pacific Tourism Organization, who, Mr. Crocker, we've just heard the presentations and those words from Mr. Pololiki Kashvili, the Secretary General of the WTO, and of course the Executive Director. Now, on your part, can you please tell us what is, in your assessment, the effect of COVID in the Pacific, and where are we in terms of where is the Pacific in terms of its recovery? And while you are at it, would you be able to also tell us some of the lessons that the tourism sector, what are the lessons that the tourism sector and the government should take and should learn from the pandemic, and what can be done to improve resilience in this important sector? Thank you.
Thank you, Sai, and warm Pacific greetings and Ali to distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. COVID-19, and I don't want to focus on the doom and gloom of COVID-19, but it has actually impacted drastically our Pacific nations, and SPTO has 20 Pacific Island nations in this case. If you compare 2019 and 2020, the tourism receipts in 2019 was about US$4 billion for our 20 Pacific nations. That drastically reduced to about US$681 million in 2020. In terms of tourism contribution to GDP, it reduced from 7.8% to about 1.3%. The air arrivals fell about 83% between those 2 years, and cruise arrivals about 73% reduction. The key challenges that we've faced in terms of COVID-19 in our Pacific region is the limited global and regional airline connections and frequency. As you're probably aware, our main gateway to our region is Fiji as the hub in this case, and we are fortunate that Fiji has opened on the 1st of December, which is a bold step. The loss of critical staff and institutional knowledge and job skills from the tourism sector to other sectors, as well as, of course, to the regional labor scheme that's happening overseas as well. The access to finance to keep businesses afloat has been a constant challenge for our tourism sector, and the loss of revenue, of course, for the tourism suppliers. The long-term delay in restart, because most of our Pacific Island countries are still closed and their readiness for border reopening is slower than anticipated. As at the moment, out of our 20 SPTO member countries, only 3 are open: Fiji, French Polynesia, as well as the Cook Islands. The rest still remain closed. Of course, natural disasters, and the Honourable Minister of Tonga has also alluded to that, of cyclones as well as tsunamis, volcanic eruption, has increased the risk of national and regional capacity to recover from pandemic impacts. And the other key challenge we have is the difficult to forecast for the future because of the lack of data and insights in this case. However, it's not all doom and gloom. COVID-19 has provided us with the opportunity from SPTO and our Pacific member countries to sit back and think carefully in the past 2 years of where we are moving in terms of resetting, rethinking, and rebuilding tourism. As a result, we have a revised strategic plan that has also considered the key pandemic that's happened. And we have endorsed by our Council of Ministers, which I'm very happy that we have a minister from Tonga here, as well as the Minister of Samoa for tourism, our Pacific Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework in moving forward, a digital strategy, and our Pacific Tourism Statistics Strategy. Our Pacific Islands will appeal to the new travelers that are coming in terms of seeking off the beaten track destinations. They're becoming environmentally more responsible and giving back to communities, etc. The Australian and New Zealand market, which is our major source, are willing to travel. Despite the restrictions and opening of borders, they're eager to get out of their comfort zone and in their respective countries. The unique selling points of our 20 Pacific Island nations remains a competitive advantage because we are blessed with differences of our 20 Pacific nations. Product diversification is also a great opportunity. And also because tourism sector is linked to many sectors and multi-sectoral, you can use tourism as a driver to achieve the SDGs and also protect and preserve our cultures, land and ocean. What are we doing at SPTO in terms of recovery mechanisms? And I think I would like to highlight that we have managed in the past 2 years to establish innovative and strategic partnerships. We have developed a SME Ready Recovery online toolkit for all our members, and that was in partnership with the US government in this case. We've also conducted micro-credential digital training for the unemployed that were from the tourism sector, and that was a partnership with UNDP, SPTO, APTC, and funded by the government of Japan. The New Zealand government funded a SPTO Job Links website to provide jobs opportunities for our tourism sector employees who have made unemployed in this case. And we also have other sectors there that are providing job opportunities. Through the Republic of Korea, we are working on a online shop that promotes our niche products, as well as we can promote our destinations in the Pacific. We've collaborated and currently collaborating with MasterCard International as well as Forward Keys on enhancing our data insights and intelligence for our key market sources. And with the Pacific Private Sector Development Initiative Phase 4 program, which is funded by New Zealand AMFET, DFAT, and ADB, the focus is supporting our tourism private sector in recovery. Just recently, the New Zealand government has endorsed a 4-year program for the Pacific Digital Transformation Project of our tourism sector in this case. Sustainable tourism commitments, we signed the Glasgow Declaration at COP26 last year. We also have our own Pacific Sustainable Tourism commitments that our member countries are signing. Lessons learned from COVID in moving forward. In the Pacific, we are resetting through digital transformation. We are rethinking through innovative collaboration regionally and globally. And we're rebuilding through responsible, sustainable tourism recovery that depends, of course, highly on research and data insights. In moving forward, from our Pacific perspective, responsible, sustainable tourism recovery guided by SPTO's Pacific Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework is a must. Regional leadership by SPTO in cooperation with our member countries, digital transformation guided by our Pacific Digital Strategy, and also that our countries benefit from this through country solutions. Global and regional cooperation is vital, and an integrated approach and commitment to measuring sustainability and enhanced data and insights to guide our tourism sector during these uncertain times. And I won't forget, of course, sustainable financing from development partners is crucial in making us being able to move forward with these initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crocker. That was very appreciated, your intervention. Thank you for providing us with a snapshot of what the Pacific Tourism is spearheading, your programs, digital transformation. Very encouraging, looking forward, and the lessons learned. Thank you for those. I now have the pleasure of requesting Ms. Caroline Niraidis. She's, of course, as I said earlier, the sole proprietor and a financial consultant, book and business service here in Palau. Caroline, please, you are the local entrepreneur and have seen the economic effect of the pandemic in Palau firsthand. Looking towards a recovery, what opportunities do you see for local tourism companies to build back better, and how can the government support the sustainable growth of the private sector in the tourism private sector?
Thank you, Sai. Ali, and welcome distinguished guest. First, I'd like to thank our Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Environment for sending the invite to come and speak before you. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm only going to speak about my experience while living in Palau. But before I do that, let us define what tourism is. We all have different definition of tourism, but really, if you stop and think about it, tourism is about our ocean plus our people. That's tourism. We need to invest in our ocean. We need to protect our ocean. We need to invest in our people. And that's what we need to sustain from now into the future. I was asked to come and speak about my experience regarding the local businesses, what impact COVID-19 has on the business community and in the tourism. As we all know, Palau relies on tourism as its bread and butter. Here in the islands, we call it fish and taro. But when the pandemic hit the worldwide, we, the island nations, we saw fear. We saw a lot of disaster in many countries, deaths. We were one of the very last countries in the world to receive COVID-19 in our doorsteps. And when we did, what did we do? But we have to thank our ministry, our government. Our government were at the forefront. They made sure that COVID-19 measures were in place. They started educating the people. They started educating the business community what to expect if COVID-19 arrived into your doorstep. So we are very fortunate this partnership between the business community, the people, and the government for setting up good COVID-19 measures. And that's why we are having this conference here today. Fear. The fear of COVID-19 had a lot of impact on the businesses community. It was a household name. You turn on social media, all they talk about is COVID-19. But for us, I think COVID-19 was a blessing in disguise. We took it upon ourselves to prioritize our health, the health of our individuals, our family, our workers, our businesses. So while we talk about COVID-19, the recovery, we have to think that there are advances and we're promising we took actions to. The business sector, when COVID-19 came to our doorstep, we were forced to close our borders. But you know what? That did not stop us. The people became creativepreneurs. We had to come up with ideas to continue to survive. And part of that is you need to be able, the government say, go out, you need to start farming, start growing vegetables. So loss of employment for some of us, reduced hours. People were forced to grow their own vegetables, become creative. I invite you folks while you're here to visit some of the local stores, the Franco's, Save More, the mom and pop stores. You will see a lot of the local, we call them food baskets, bento boxes, which they call it in Japan. These are part of all that work that went into how to become creative, how to become a creative entrepreneur. So it didn't stop there. This COVID-19 gave us the opportunity to set back, restructure our prices. How can we sell to the domestic market? With the borders closed, all we had was just the local people, the local businesses. We saw businesses changing their rates, allowing discounts for diving packages. We saw young entrepreneurs being certified through young divers certification. But those were opportunities that the local business contributed to the economy. But most of all, I believe that with COVID-19, the borders closed, that gave the opportunity for our ocean, our marine life, to really rejoice, enjoy the nature without any intrusion from visitors. allow all the animals in our environment to survive and be free of all the visitors that we get on a normal day. So COVID-19, while it may have an impact on our tourism, had its advantages. It allowed a lot of the business to set back, come up with new packages for when we do reopen, renovate. There were saw a lot of family bonding. I mean, those were opportunities that we saw that the business communities were involved. But again, we need to reassess our priorities. And again, the government was our partner. The private sector is the driving force here. This is our economy, tourism, our fish and taro. But before I continue, I'd like to share a project that I was fortunate to be involved. This project was funded by the UN Secretary General's Multi-Partner Trust Fund for COVID-19 inclusive economic recovery through sustainable enterprise in the informal economies. In short, Informal Economic Recovery Project. And I'm glad to say that the partner in this project was the Palau Chamber of Commerce, and they were the business development service provider. And the goal behind this project was to get these creative artists become creativepreneurs. Go ahead.
The Palau Chamber of Commerce collaborates with quite a few different organizations, one of them being the Informal Economies Recovery Project, the ILO, International Labor Organization, UNESCO, UNDP. And, those have been very helpful. Those organizations have been very, very helpful with the assistance to get small businesses that weren't really even known much in the business community and the private and public sector. It's just great to see these small young entrepreneurs, from artists, musicians to just pottery and these other small businesses. And we've been, even through the Chamber of Commerce, collaborating with them as well to help them get discovered, help them get started, and help them get recognized throughout the sectors in Palau and through especially the tourism sector.
Today marks an important milestone for the creative industries in Palau and also for the UN agencies supporting this joint project, ILO, UNESCO, and UNDP. We bear witness to the graduation of the first group of business owners who have completed the 10 weeks of business training, advisory, and mentoring program. Today's event is a great indicator that we are moving forward, that we are building forward from the impact of COVID-19. Like many Pacific countries, businesses in and related tourism sector in Palau have been hard hit, including informal sector, micro enterprises in the tourism value chain. For instance, ILO supported a rapid assessment on the impact of COVID-19 in Palau, found out that nearly 40% of businesses were temporarily closed and 3% were permanently closed. In supporting the creativepreneurs, there has been some very good synergies created by ILO, UNESCO, and UNDP. UNESCO supported the technical trainings, ILO supported the business development trainings, and UNDP the business resilience through business continuity planning. Bringing these together at the national level has been the Chamber of Commerce and the Palau Museum. The net benefits of such partnership and coordinated delivery will surely be experienced by creativepreneurs graduating today. For the ILO, this is the first set of graduates with Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu following early next year. In conclusion, I would like to thank our national partners of the project and the tripartite partner of ILO, Palau Chamber of Commerce, in particular President, who took very keen interest in this project. The administrative support and technical expertise allowed us to deliver the business component of this important training. I also thank the national consultants on the ground who provided the coordination for this activity, ensured that the project delivered on time. Finally, to our creativepreneurs, I hope that learning from this business training have upskilled you and you're able to grow and sustain your enterprises. I also hope that you will enjoy your graduation and network mixer, and I wish you your business well for the future. Thank you very much.
So this project took almost 9 months. We started in late July and was complete by December of last year.
Ali from Palau. My name is Talat Fritz, and I have had the pleasure of being the co-national consultant for the ILO project here in Palau. My role as national consultant with Carol Mirevis has been to secure a business development service provider to provide trainings for the creativepreneurs in the areas of business planning, financial record keeping, cash flow management, a little bit about technology and online tools, digital tools. We were very fortunate that the Palau Chamber of Commerce was able to deliver all 10 workshops within the limited time frame that they were given last year and help graduate these entrepreneurs in the ILO Informal Economies project here in Palau. I'm also very excited that the artists decided to join a cooperative as their strategy for recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. Together, they are able to combine their resources, continue to network, and share knowledge and inspire one another while they journey in this road to recovery. Once again, thank you, ILO, UNESCO, and UNDP for funding this project and creating opportunities for Palau's creativepreneurs. Kampmal Masula.
I'm not saying so much been helpful to me. I have recovered my skills. When I started working, I didn't really have time to do the arts and carving. So when I started with the ILO, it really helped a lot, bringing back my rhythm, my skills up to the higher level.
Yung mal kadamre nga sulila ILO ma kami ulot mage emro choose ruli tagi program select artist dadi tua se mga artial kamamya artist radel bela rogul artist bol soril me part siya mangwai say haigal go belgi mola amoy lo sesis ya wa ILO wal recognize say gim mereka sulil artist awal ko invisible people community tadi loy tiang ada spare tadi sorry la arts tire mo tira loy ma tala yelo ang dili ko mo iligaman mo so sa bagin issues wali legal matters ma wa corporation how to make license and so on malu
by mal health prangaling you get me connected to a lot of people other go through them so I'm appreciate mal thankful that the ILO is here to help us and I'm really thankful for everything.
Mal klole for now yak mal di namu honor self patriak namum dasol wasi mangaranek self step sebagai morning motrawahidak. Leng dim la halway sel do siram in fact tang man lo wal batong mal bol kora sa sel kar mo kalorabli keleng active role di omei dim laksal concentrate sel wasing role tial mo ngarang klal mo sa motraw ang sen sois brak tru role and the